Hi, everybody. This is the Acoustic Guitar Show and another great guest today, introduced by the jingle. Ladies and gentlemen, James Barton.
Hey, Daniele. Thank you for having me.
Oh, thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much. I'm really happy that you found time to do this, and not just because of your line of credits, because it's pretty amazing. At a certain point, I had to stop. But,
Yeah, I do too. It makes me feel old.
no, not really. We might have been in the same place. You recorded the Synchronicity tour for the Police?
Yes, I did.
I was in Rome at the show in 1983 or 84.
Yeah, right.
Were you there that night?
Probably. It was a 7-month tour,
Yeah.
so we kind of did a global thing, and we built a studio inside of a container, and we just had that shipped all over the world.
Yeah. Amazing.
Yeah.
So, who knows?
Level.
We might have been in the same place at the
we
time.
could have been.
But other than no, I will. Would you like to introduce yourself with a couple of words, just for the audience?
Sure. My name's James Jimbo Barton. I've been working in the music industry for many years, and I've recorded many people. And how else do I introduce myself? I'm not sure, but I'm happy to be here with you all. So, and thank you all for coming.
Oh, thank you so much for your time. Among the, this is about acoustic guitar.
Yes.
Among the many amazing things you have done, we just spoke about the Synchronicity tour of the Police, so that could be enough for for all of us. But you were involved not just in that record, but you were involved in the Unplugged that Eric Clapton recorded in the 90s.
Yes, I was.
Yes, you were, and even Mellencamp. The
Mellencamp, Queensryche. I was doing a lot of shows at the time for MTV.
Yeah.
I had a pretty good friend there, Joel Gallen, and so I used to often work with him on these projects.
And this is great because I think that the Eric Clapton Unplugged really changed the story of acoustic guitar from a certain point on, you know, because the acoustic guitar became again a very popular instrument. And you confirmed this last week, maybe when we just chat briefly. You told me that Eric himself called you and told you that that record became the best selling Unplugged records of all time.
Yeah, apparently it's now done in excess of 26 million copies.
Yeah, which is not bad.
Not too shabby.
Not bad for an Unplugged record.
Right?
And this is great because I'm very curious about the whole setup, because we talk about recording, but we always talk about recording at home. But I'm really curious to know what happened on such a weird place like that, because it's a live thing, but it's kind of a studio thing too, right?
Yeah, we had a mobile van outside, which was belonged to Manor, the Manor Studios or Townhouse Studios in London.
Yeah.
And we hired that, and I didn't realize when I first got on the project that I thought it was just going to be a recording and that I could mix it after the fact. But they actually, MTV wanted to broadcast it live. So that kind of changed everything. So
so it was pre-mixed.
Well, yeah, the mobile had a Neve console in it, but it wasn't big enough to do a recording of all of those instruments and be able to do a mix playback. So I had to get another console in. So I brought in a console called a Mackie,
Yeah.
a 56 channel Mackie, and I put that on top of the once I had all the sounds and everything. I put the Mackie on top of that and plugged in all the channels so that I could actually mix off the Mackie console, and that's what went live to air.
And the record is pretty much that. You never had a chance to touch it after.
The record got remixed for commercial release, but what went to air live is pretty much the same thing.
Okay, I have a vinyl of that recording, so it
Right.
might be a little edited after the fact.
Yeah, for sure. Unfortunately, we spent 3 weeks doing the Unplugged album. Eric, when we turned up, everyone, obviously had booked all the guys he wanted to play on the project, and but Eric didn't really have a running list or a song list, or wasn't really sure of what he was going to play.
Oh,
So it's sort of it came together over the course of 3 weeks, and we're at a place called Bray Studios, which is not that far from Heathrow in London, and
yeah.
it's an old film studio called Hammer House of Horrors. So that was the location that was booked by MTV to do the project.
Okay, so you had time to set up everything. They were rehearsing. You were getting the sounds together.
Yeah. We basically had 3 weeks to get it together, and Eric put together a set list, and bit by bit, and there were amazing musicians on the project.
Yeah, definitely.
Sometimes I'd be in the room and I'd just look around at everyone and think, well, what am I doing here?
Well,
who's the elephant in the room here?
You were doing your job pretty well, I think.
Bill Payne from Little Feat, and just amazing musicians on it.
Yeah. That record is something.
That band, and yeah, it's great. It's an amazing album. It was a lot of fun doing it too.
Did you feel at the time that it was going to be so big, so important, because it was a seminal record?
Yeah, but I have to say, it wasn't until like we'd rehearsed, and we'd heard the set, 50 times or whatever, but
yeah,
it wasn't actually until the night that it went to air. And I'm sitting there listening, and I'm just thinking, oh my God, this is amazing.
Can we speak?
Amazing.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I stepped over.
No, not at all.
Can we speak briefly about the setup? Can you tell us something about the microphones that were used, especially on the guitars, preamps or compression or whatever? Because this is what we are going to talk about. So it's very interesting to have you.
Well, I'm the kind of guy that I want to have. The end result for me ultimately is to have all of the faders on the console at 0, but I want to hear it how it's going to sound.
Yeah.
So I EQ, I compress, I do everything on the way into Pro Tools. So it's all done so that when you lift the faders up at any given time, what you hear is what you get.
Yeah,
so,
yeah. Old time recording school.
Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah. And do you remember what you used?
I just yeah, and it was pretty basic miking. On the drums was a D12 on the kick drum, KM84 underneath the snare, a 57 on top, tom-toms were just 421s. Overheads were Neve U87s. And I had a KM84 on the ride cymbal.
And what about the guitar, especially the acoustic guitar?
KM84s I had on, but I had to keep them out of the shot. So I think we switched out to another microphone because the video director said they were too big for. They got in the way. So I think we switched out to some sort of small Sony microphone, which didn't bother me. That's fine.
For Eric guitar.
Eric and for
the other player.
Yeah, the other guy.
The other acoustic guitar player. Yeah. And so the setup was so the microphone went into EQ and compression.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what do you usually use for that?
Well, on Eric's acoustic, I didn't compress him. That just went through an EQ. It just went through a Neve EQ, and then straight to Pro Tools because it didn't need compression. He plays.
Yeah.
He plays so amazingly that you don't need to compress him.
Yeah, pretty well.
Yeah,
he's a nice player.
Oh my God, yeah, yeah, he's sick.
Yeah.
But for the most part, all the other instruments went through some sort of compression and soft compression, very soft.
Yeah.
Like you don't hear it. And then through a Neve EQ just to put the fairy dust back in.
So let's start. I have a few standard questions, but this is about you. It's about you and how you feel about the whole thing. So what if I say acoustic guitar? What's your first
instrument that's been with me all my life?
Right.
I played acoustic as a kid. I've still got my childhood acoustic sitting down the hallway. So they're beautiful instruments, but it's I think it's quite a feat to learn how to capture it properly.
Yeah.
And it's something that I worked on for quite a while. So. But, I had a history in orchestral music, and so I've worked with probably every instrument you can think of, and acoustic guitar is just one of those beautiful things.
Yeah, someone said. I'm sorry.
One person playing guitar and one vocal, and you've got a show. And there's not many other instruments you can do that with, maybe piano.
So, when you mic an acoustic guitar, you go for mono, stereo, or I should say that the readers of the magazine are mainly focused on fingerstyle guitar. But we will talk about guitar and vocals too, because there is a lot of songwriting and everything. So what's your go-to setup, if you have one?
Well, on that particular show, because it was a whole band, I went mono on the guitars so that I could pan them and separate them like that. But if it's a solo guitar player, I'll usually use 2 mics, sometimes 3 mics. And I'll use a KM84 near the hole. I use another KM84 down on the fretboard that's looking at the fretboard. And then I have a U87 sitting back that captures the overall with a bit of room sound on it. Not too far back, maybe, 2 or 3 feet back.
Okay. And so the 284 are pretty close one to the other.
Yeah, they're pretty close. But you don't, obviously you can't phase cancel them, so you got to, they might be next to each other, but they're looking in opposite directions.
Yeah, so like XY or something.
Yeah, one of them looks down the fretboard, and one of them sits just slightly off the hole. Because if you put a microphone in front of the hole, it's booming, and
Yeah, it will explode.
yeah, it's not very nice sounding.
Yeah. Do you like the sound of the bottom curve of the guitar below the bridge?
Oh yeah, yeah.
It's a very
But
interesting sound.
yeah, it depends on who the musician is. Actually,
Yeah,
you know,
sure.
I don't do the same thing every time. You have to have a listen to who's playing it and what they're playing, and you base what you feel is required on their style of playing.
Of course. When you think of acoustic guitar, is there something related to frequencies that you would like to say? Just something that you know that is going to cause you
Yeah,
trouble, whatever.
absolutely. When I record an acoustic guitar, I want to hear the strings being fretted, and I want to hear the right hand or the left hand, depending on which way you play.
Yeah,
But I need to be able to hear every single thing that's happening on that guitar.
yeah.
And occasionally, in fact, I did that on the Unplugged thing. Both the acoustic guitars had internal pickups, so I took a DI as
Oh,
well as the microphones, and I did a blend of the DI and the mics.
oh. So there was a DI that night.
Yeah, but only used minimally, and
Yeah,
it helps fill in the bottom end a little bit, helps fill in the low frequencies, and you have to obviously always you have to phase reverse the DI, or it'll be out of phase to the microphones.
okay.
Yeah, so I like to have, if someone's got a DI on their guitar, I will
Yeah,
always plug it in, even if I don't use it. I'll just make sure I have access to it.
sure, sure.
Mm.
It probably will give a little more sustain to the note, because sometimes the microphone is, especially in some big
Yeah,
environments.
yeah, it can, but it's more for the warmth on the low end, which sometimes, like if you've got a drum kit sitting behind an acoustic guitar, you can't really boost the low frequencies on the microphone because you're
Yeah,
going to be picking up, kick drum and snare drum and things like that.
yeah. So the next question should be microphone versus pickup, but we just we just pretty much said everything about it, right?
Yeah, always microphone, number one. And if
Number
I
one.
pick up, it's as a tiny support. I don't like to use just the pickup.
Yeah. So small diaphragm is what you go for first, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know if you have a question or a thought, an answer or a thought about this. And I know that not too many readers are so concerned about it because hardware is very expensive if you want the real stuff. But are you involved with plugins today? And what's your idea about the whole thing?
No, I'm completely into plugins. I mean, my partner and I, about 4 years ago, we had a massive SSL console in Los Angeles at our studio there, and we ended up selling it just because it was too cumbersome to do recalls. It sounded beautiful, and I loved it, and I
Yeah,
do
sure.
miss the console, but I kind of jumped on board for going in the box. And there's so many wonderful plugins around. Like I use a Neve plugin as well. I'm working on a project right now.
Which model is it? Which brand? What are you using?
On the Neve,
Yeah, yeah. Which kind of?
it's a 1079, I guess.
Made by?
It's Sheps. Made by Sheps. But it's basically a 1079 module.
Great. So it's the Waves plugin, the Andrew Sheps.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I use that all the time. It's great.
Hmm.
So you're mixing in the box? You're not mixing on console anymore?
No, not anymore. I haven't done for several years.
Great.
But
And
you work with people who have studios in their home and very expensive studios, and they prefer to use their console. So either or, I can get on a console, I can do it in the box.
do you find significant differences? I mean, you can still get out with a record, which sounds amazing, right? Even in the box.
Absolutely. I think, moving, a lot of people say that moving to inside the box was a difficult transition, but for me, it wasn't. You just maintain what you've always heard and what you want to hear. Just maintain that. It doesn't matter whether you're in the box or on a console. Yeah. You know how something needs to sound.
Yeah.
And you make the adjustments to suit.
Yeah, sure. When you change from a compressor to another, they're different. So if you go to a plugin, it's still different, but you're looking for a sound.
Yeah, right. But I still use plugins inside the box that I use on a console. Like I'll use, 1176 compressor, an EVQ, an SSL EQ. They're all available. Like everything that you need is available. So,
what do you like on acoustic guitar?
As far as plugins?
Yeah, which may be the same things you used as hardware, as you said.
Yeah, the only thing it hasn't really changed for me. It's almost like I'm still on a console. There's no difference. I still think the same way. I still run the effects the same way.
Yeah.
I'm going to use a reverb or I'm going to use a delay. I set it up like I would be on a console, as in down the end of all the tracks that you have recorded, I put all the plugins, the reverbs, delays, whatever you need, down one end of the console. And I bus off the instrument to that effect.
Yeah, sure.
I don't want it on the channel of the instrument because in my experience, I've just found that if you put it on the channel itself, it degrades the sound of the instrument.
Oh, even most plugins today have a mix knob, so you can. Do you find that's useful, or you are still going 100% with a bus?
No, I don't find it useful.
Okay.
I find that it adjusts. It kind of ruins the sound of the instrument that you're recording, and so when I bus out to the effect, you can have control on the bus level,
sure,
to the effect, and so I find that at least the instrument maintains the quality that you've dialed up on it.
Great. Are you using universal audio plugins too?
Yes, I am. 1176. I use all kinds of things.
Yeah, you probably
the plugins are all there, and they're not exactly the same as using the real things, but they're so close to it. It's not a big shift to, make an adjustment.
Yeah, so when you're using a Fairchild or Pultec clone or LA2A, you find the result is pretty much the same.
Yeah. Actually, I've got an old friend called Chris Lord Elgie. I'm sure you've heard of him.
Yeah, sure.
He's a mixer from LA, and he recently was out here on a project, and we got together a couple of times, and he said, "Hey man, how come you haven't not using my shit?" So I went and had a look at his stuff, and I ended up downloading some of his stuff. And
The new plugin is amazing. Have you seen that one, the Epic?
yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, with all those, it's just his idea on the console. On the console, the delays going into the reverbs, they feed them, and you can choose all the different signal path. It's amazing.
Yeah.
It's got some wonderful presets because it's pretty weird. It's complicated, at least for me.
Yeah, it's I mean, we do the same thing still here. It's I'll put a delay into the reverb or something, like, maybe 110 milliseconds before it hits the reverb, just to give it a bit of separation.
So when you do that, you put them, let's imagine you have a bus channel with that.
Yeah.
Do you make one bus channel with the delay and then the reverb, or you make two bus channels and you feed one after the other?
No, I'll do like a auxiliary input for where all my effects are at the end of the session. Like after the instruments, I have all the effects and things. So if I want to put a delay to a reverb, depending on the reverb, some of the reverbs, the pre-delays actually sounds pretty cool, but sometimes it's not that great. If it's not that great, I will put a delay, send the instrument to the delay, and then send the delay to the reverb.
Great. So you listen to the pre-delay of the reverb first, and then you decide which way to go.
Yeah, but once you put the reverb on it, it might be too bright. So, but the great thing I find about that is that on the delay, you can roll off frequencies in the high end that may be bothering you, that, you don't want to hear that much in the reverb.
Sure.
So for me, that's the easiest way to find to work on it.
Let's talk about reverb. Here we are.
All right. Well,
acoustic guitar and reverb. Acoustic guitar and reverb.
I always used to use the Lexicon 480L.
Yeah.
And there's an array of reverbs out, but I don't have any set ways on things like that. When I'm setting up a session, I might set up 5 or 6 different reverbs that I can throw to. One might be a short one, like a roomy kind of non-linear thing. Another one might be like 2.5 delay, decay time.
Yeah.
Set up another one that's 6-second delay time or a decay time, or
Is there?
I have them all there, and like that, all I've got to do is have the instrument bus to all of the reverbs, and I can just hit one after the other and see which one I like the most.
Sure. Maybe combining them. Do you use that?
Occasionally, I might use a non-linear, and then if the player goes off into a solo or something, I don't want to lose the sound of the non-linear, so I'll engage a 3-second decay time or something like that.
Yeah.
Sometimes with a pre-delay in it, so that you don't smoke out the initial source of the instrument. Like you don't want it to step over what's being performed.
Yeah, sure.
I find with a short pre-delay, it gives it enough separation so the instrument speaks first. But to the listener, it's not a big enough delay that you hear, oh shit, he's got a delay on that thing.
Yeah.
Like you won't hear that. It just sounds like a reverb.
If you record guitar and voice, and you have to go probably is what you do all the time. You go together at the same time.
Yeah.
What do you do? Well, how do you deal with bleed and which microphones you use, the position? Is there something, because people that record at home most of times really have no clue about that.
Right. If I can, and the performer is experienced enough, I will always try and put a piece of cardboard, it's just held with gaffer tape off the microphone stand, but some sort of shield, so that when they look down at what they're chording, you don't get this massive vocal thing into the guitar.
Yeah.
And it just kind of separates it and keeps the vocal on the vocal mic. And they can still look down and see what they're fretting. But if I can't do that, I'm working on a project at the moment for this guy from Hawaii called Mishka. And the hardest job on this one is not like there's a lot of bleed into the acoustic guitar. And so I've got to, it's kind of shocking, like the massive level changes that I've got to pull the vocal down, or if it's too boxy because of the guitar, I've got to, for a split second, pull the guitar level down, but make it invisible. Like you can't hear that pull down, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So it can be a task, and on this project that I'm working on, it's two mics and a vocal mic on his guitar. So it's taken me quite a while to get the balance right, so that you don't hear you're not aware of things changing.
Yeah.
It just seems like, wow, this guy sounds great. And he does anyway. He sounds great.
But you had two microphones on the guitar and one on the vocal.
Yeah.
And which microphones would you suggest if you have to record at the same time? Maybe one each.
Well, I like the Neumann Cam 84 just because they've got a fairly defined trajectory as into what they look at. It's not like an omni thing. It's pretty. It just looks at where you point it.
Yeah, sure. This for the vocals or the guitar?
No, on the vocals I'll usually use either a Neumann M49 or a Neumann 87 U87. And they're kind of my weapons of choice, and they have been for years.
You know them.
Microphones and.
So when you record those two things together, you have to EQ adjusting things. So separately they might be weird, but when you put them together, they just sound great.
Absolutely.
Okay, so
you have to take into account, you can get a great sound on the acoustic, but if you don't have the vocal mic on, and then suddenly you turn the vocal mic in, everything goes to shit, and it's like, wow, what happened? So I always EQ with all three microphones on.
Okay.
So it's no surprise at the end. What you get, you can hear it.
You just press unmute and everything.
Oh wow, it sounds great without the vocal mic on. Sorry, man, we got a singer on this session.
What can we do? We have a singer.
Yeah.
Great. So we are to the final part of the thing, which most of our readers and listeners are, waiting for. So home recording tips could be everything. If you have a microphone or two to suggest, which can be maybe affordable. If you have knowledge of some audio card that and if you have a few suggestions on how, mic placement, use your room or whatever.
Right. Yeah, I've done many albums in houses, and but fortunately, I've had budgets so that I can get equipment in. The record company doesn't mind paying for a rack of knees or
Sure.
compressors or microphones or whatever. But for home recording, there's so much new stuff that's out there that apparently sounds really good. But I have to say I've not really gotten into it because I have a little bit of a mainstay of things that I use.
Of
I know
course.
how I want something to sound, and I know which things are going to give me that sound that I want.
So, if it's just an acoustic guitar, would you suggest a large diaphragm, maybe one a little better in quality, or two small diaphragms to make a stereo recording?
No, I don't think. With an acoustic, it's kind of nice to have a bit of a stereo image, but I think I mentioned that I always put a microphone back from the instrument, and sometimes I might make that distant microphone a stereo microphone that's got the XY. Well, there we go.
Yeah.
The XY thing, looking at the instrument from 2 or 3 feet back, and so I'll achieve my stereo imaging from that distant microphone, but the microphone that's right by the hole and the one on the fretboard are mono.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, so it's
but in that case, you have to have a stereo microphone.
Right, that's your central fix. But the room mic is often a stereo pair of microphones.
Okay, so we could say that.
Also, actually, a great sound. If the guy performing is singing at the same time, it's also a great way to get a bit of a stereo image on the vocal mic.
Oh, interesting. How you do that?
Well, it's just the mics that you've got back off the guitar, and the sheer volume of what the guy's singing hits those microphones as well. So, if the guy sings loudly, you'll hear a bit more in the room mics.
Yeah.
And it's a bit of a stereo image. I mean, sometimes you have to help fudge it. And in cases like that, I would use a non-linear reverb that's, quite short. It's just like a short room sound. And you'll just add a little bit of that, which bridges the gap between the guitar microphones and your stereo distant microphones.
Great.
If that makes any sense.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. Because there is a physical distance.
Yeah.
That you have to feel.
Yeah, and I just find that sometimes if a little bit of non-linear on the close mics on the guitar just bridges that distance between the stereo mics that are looking at the whole picture. They're looking at the singer and the acoustic guitar.
Yeah. And something that people never consider, when you are working in your own room, you tend to stuff things on the walls, try to deaden the sound. But many of the engineers I've been talking these days, they suggested to let the room sound, maybe find the best spot inside, but to have a room not too dead to record. What's your feeling about it?
Well, I don't like hearing slap off the room. That bothers me. So I've got a bass trap that sits behind me, which is basically a closet full of shirts.
Oh, great. A bass trap.
That's my bass trap.
This is amazing. This made my day. Thank you.
Yeah. And the rest of it, I always use near field monitoring. I don't use distant monitoring. I prefer monitors right in front of me.
Yeah.
And so, room treatment, it's no big deal for me. And if it is an issue, I'll, go out to Target stores or Kmart and buy a blanket and
Okay.
nail it up on the wall.
Great. The old school rules.
Yeah. I mean, it's
Yeah.
not hard, and you don't have to go out and get an audio expert to fix your room up. If you don't want to have room sound on what you're doing,
Yeah.
just build yourself a little box out of blankets. It's not hard.
Yeah.
You get a couple of broomsticks and hang blankets off those around you and sit in a little U-shaped room with blankets on it, and then you don't have to have that roomy boomy sound. You can make it quite dead and intimate.
Yeah. Do you like to mix at low volume?
Yeah, always.
Okay.
Always. I mean, occasionally, if I'm sitting in a studio and they've got $60,000 worth of monitors in there,
Yeah.
I might turn it up while I'm getting drums or something like that. But yes, it's always low volume. I mean, look at these little tiny things I'm using this way. They're just little like shelf speakers, and
Yeah, sure.
yeah. So I don't need. I've always found that the best mixes I've ever done have usually been done on
NS10s.
Oratone speakers, NS10s.
Yeah.
And if a project sounds amazing at really low volume and you can hear everything at low volume on a low perspective speaker that doesn't have an amazing frequency response, anytime once you finish mixing and you turn it up on big speakers, it's like, wow.
Wow.
That sounds great.
Yeah, I think there is some experience involved in it.
Yeah.
I mean, you can do that. I don't think everyone can do that, but I perfectly get the point.
Right. I just find that on little speakers, if you can hear every nuance and detail on a little speaker, when it goes onto a bigger speaker, it's only going to get better.
Yeah, of course. This is a great tip. So, James or Jimbo, how do you prefer to be called? I don't know.
Anything except late for dinner. Don't call me late for dinner. I want to be there when dinner starts.
Thank you so much for doing this. I really appreciated you trying in every possible way, and we had a few technical issues that we brilliantly solved.
Absolutely.
So thank you so much.
Well,
You
thank
made my
you for having me, man. It's a pleasure.
Definitely my pleasure. So from down under, James Jimbo Barton, and this was the
Mishka. Mishka.com is the album. Mishka, Mishka.
New album you're working on.
Yeah, he's a guy from Hawaii, and it's.
I will definitely.
Yeah, he's a very special guy. I really, really like it. So, I don't often just work on anything, but a good friend of mine sent me Mishka's demo, and I heard the demo and just thought, wow, this guy's great. So anyways, everyone look it up. Check him out. Mishka.com.
Mishka.com, everyone. Okay. Yeah. So this was the Acoustic Guitar Show. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, James, for doing this. I will end the broadcast now.
Thank you, Daniele.